Hi everyone. It's very nice to be here today. As Kelsey mentioned earlier, I used to be a lawyer and then I picked up Go. I actually picked up Go last July, so I'm actually slightly less than a year old with my Go experience. I've titled this talk A Beginner's Mind. I was actually worried that in a room full of experienced programmers, would they appreciate a talk like a beginner's, called Beginner's Mind? And then I remembered that everyone in the room must have started off as a beginner, so this should be applicable to everyone. A little bit about me. Yes, I'm a practicing lawyer. I didn't really like what I did, actually. I didn't enjoy what I was doing, even though I was practicing for about a year. Generally, I'm quite a curious person. I love math. I love literature, photography. I love beautiful things. My dad is an ex-programmer. He used to program, but he stopped programming for a long time, so I don't think it crossed his mind to introduce me to programming. How I became interested in programming? At some point last year, I became increasingly curious about programming. I began to wonder, what is it about the web? How does the web work? How do they communicate with each other? And I just became increasingly curious about it and I wanted to know more about it. So I started to look into it. I started to find out more about it and I began looking into picking up programming. I first started with front-end programming. That was April last year. And then with front-end programming, I picked up HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and built simple programs with it. Okay, so that was 3 months that I spent seriously learning about front-end. And then in end June, I started to, I was still frustrated. I still didn't know a lot of things about programming, so I wanted to learn a backend language. So the usual suspects came up. I was considering Python. With Python, I went through the usual courses online, the tutorials online. With Python, there were a lot of concepts that were immediately thrown to me at the beginning. So frameworks like Django came into the picture very quickly, even as I was learning how to build a simple web app. Things like PIP, virtual env, self. The best part was different tutorials would teach me using Python 2.7 and Python 3.3, so it was very confusing. I had to install both versions, and I had to switch between both versions as I was learning. It also introduced to me things like MVC. Okay, so I thought maybe I should try Ruby. So with Ruby came with it Rails, came with it things like RVM, also MVCs and ORM. So all these concepts were thrown at me at the beginning when I was still really, really new. So maybe I should look into Node. So for Node, so Node was just Express, right? It came with a framework, but then I was still a bit unsatisfied. I felt like, maybe I should consider something else. So I asked a friend. Sorry. Okay, so just to sum up, some of the roadblocks that I faced were very troublesome development environment setup, lots of installation problems. Came with it frameworks. All of the languages, as they were teaching me, had a lot of. I always came with frameworks. Also introduced to me MVC architecture. So there was a lot of information that I didn't need, I felt, just for me to get started on web fundamentals. Okay, so, and then I went to ask another friend of mine who suggested, why don't you try Go? So Go was a completely new thing to me. I've never heard of Go. So I thought, okay, let me just look at it. It sounds interesting. It's a new language, a pretty new language. But before I go into that, I just wanted to say that as I was learning, as I was considering all these languages, there were many different voices from my friends who told me all the reasons why I shouldn't be picking up a certain language. So for Ruby on Rails, this is what they said, so it wasn't what I said. So it was too much magic for a beginner. For Python, they said, you don't learn this to build websites. For Node, JavaScript is not for the backend. So, well, I didn't say that. So guess what it was for Go? For Go, it's too difficult for beginners, and it was designed for advanced programmers. It's a systems programming language. You know, you should just stick with the usual Python, Ruby, and Node. Okay, so, but I personally went to look at it myself. I went to install Go. Installing Go was really easy. It was just installing Go 1.3. It didn't come with it frameworks, didn't throw a lot of concepts at me. It was very simple to set up. No reliance on frameworks, no MVC, didn't tell me to install this framework. As I looked into Go's libraries, the libraries alone seemed like a very good introduction to CS concepts, which I wanted to learn. So immediately there was a lot of simplicity, there was a lot of freedom in that I could focus on what I wanted to learn, concepts that I wanted to learn, and it brought a lot of focus for me. As an introduction, that was perfect, you know. So I thought, okay, let's go with Go. There was no, I wasn't frustrated by all the beginning setup issues. So when I decided to start with Go, which was last July, my knowledge of programming at this time had so far been limited to simple HTML sites, very simple JavaScript sites. I didn't understand anything about data persistence. I didn't know what SQL was. I didn't know what TCP and how I didn't know anything about server-client communication at all. And because I had no formal CS background, I didn't know any of these things. So in the following slides, I just wanted to demonstrate why I think Go is a fantastic teaching tool, and why choosing Go as my first backend language was a great choice. And I hope to show that, to dispel the notion that Go is not a good beginner language. So as usual, I started off with syntax, learning syntax in the first 3 weeks of when I decided to start Go. So the great thing about learning Go was that as I was learning Go syntax, it taught me a lot of things. It taught me a lot of programming concepts at the same time. For example, for string manipulation, I would come across the concept, I would come across runes, and curious about what runes were in Go. I was then led to read up on concepts like UTF-8, ASCII, and Unicode, and how they interrelate. So I found that it was efficient in a way in that learning Go syntax exposed to me programming concepts at the same time, which made learning Go pretty fast for me. And also, so that was about 3 weeks that I spent learning the syntax. These are the resources that I looked at. My favorite one is actually the first one, The Way to Go. It's a very comprehensive and in-depth explanation on Go and some of the concepts associated with Go. And also Go by example was very, very helpful for me. And then I decided to start on mini challenges. So the mini challenges were the ones that I found on the Go tour. So working on these challenges helped me familiarize myself with the syntax, as well as strengthen my programming muscle with Go. So and then I thought, okay, now I've finished the mini challenges. I'm going to let's build a bigger project in Go, so I can, because that's what I wanted to do. So the first app I decided to build was a CRUD app. So my first project, which is the CRUD app, was built in the 5th week that I decided to learn Go. And because Go didn't introduce things like, learning Go just somehow didn't introduce to me things like ORMs. I could focus on purely understanding persistent storage and straightforward SQL queries. So when I was building this, I'd like to draw a comparison between learning how to build a CRUD app with Go and as opposed to what I would have built had I learned a tool like Ruby on Rails. With Ruby on Rails, there are a lot of resources out there that hold your hand and tell you how to build a CRUD app step by step. But with Go, there was nothing like that. There were a lot of great resources on the language and on the philosophy behind Go, and as well as all the stuff that they teach you in the resources that I've listed earlier. But they don't really tell you, don't really handhold you. So so with Go, I did have to work to try and figure things out. Why I need, and things like why I need a SQL driver, how they all fit together. So my first app was actually one of the hardest app that I've built. So after I built the first app, there was a way for me to show my programmer friends who said that Go was too difficult, that hey, I can actually build a Go app, and I did it within 5 weeks. A week later, with the confidence that I gained from building a CRUD app, I built an API client. So I'll show you exactly what I built later on. Then I built a program that runs on the Raspberry Pi a few months later. It was interesting because Go allowed me to cross-compile, and I could cross-compile this program that runs on the Raspberry Pi, and that allows you to control the Raspberry Pi from your browser. Earlier this year in January, I released a Go library for the Spark Core. If you're familiar with the Spark Core, it's a microcontroller. Yeah, I built a Go library for that. And I also built a markdown parser. So this parser converts markdown into HTML. I released this in February this year. So this was, by this time, I think my Go experience, it's about eight months. Yeah, 8 months of Go experience. Right, so I'll talk more about the library that I've built. So, so the Spark Core is a development kit consisting of a microcontroller for creating Wi-Fi connected products. So Voodoo Spark is a firmware for the Spark Core that is written in C. It allows external programs written in languages other than C to communicate with the Spark Core by exposing APIs over a TCP connection. A JavaScript library had been written for it. So how I built this with Go was that I referenced the JavaScript library, and I tried to understand the C program. And with that, I was able to build a library in Go, which was quite straightforward to implement. So yeah, these are just some pictures of my experiment with the Spark Core. I was trying to get the LED light to blink and actually testing the program. Okay, next, the Markdown parser. It's a simple Markdown processor that converts Markdown text into HTML. So how this works is that you have a Markdown file like the one you see on the left, hello Denver, and to convert it into HTML, you run it on the command line. So it's called Marshmellow, and you convert the file. It converts into this. So it supports inline formatting, it supports bullet points, and this is the HTML that will be rendered. It's a very simple processor. So how I came to build this processor was I had very helpful resources. I think there was an article that was written by Ben Johnson. I believe he's here today. He wrote an article, and I just happened to chance upon it. So I read it, and then I was led to Rob Pike's video on lexical scanning in Go. So reading it, so it was fantastic by the time it came to this, because finally I had an example that was written in Go. I could reference a Go example instead of what I did with the CRUD app, where I had to reference examples in other languages. So looking at how things could be implemented in Go was directly very helpful for me. And also Rob Pike's video was also very enlightening for me as well. Some of the concepts that I learned, the different parsing algorithms, context-free grammar, finite state machines, abstract syntax tree. I built this in 2 weeks from the time I chanced upon Ben Johnson's article to the time I finished building a working parser. How I did this within 2 weeks, I think a lot of it has to do with Go, because I spent a lot of time understanding parsing concepts. So the bulk of my time was just spent understanding concepts, reading up on the literature and the examples of Markdown parsers. And then when I finally felt like I had a grasp on the concepts, implementing it was very straightforward in Go. I think Go gave me the tools. Go allowed me to quickly put the concepts I had in my head into implementation. And I think that's what enabled me to build this within 2 weeks. Yeah. So just for perspective, Go projects and Go learning were entirely outside my day job. It was time and commitment spent after work, every day after work, every weekend, time spent on Go. Okay, for just a summary, a recap of the timeline, the projects that I've managed to build in Go. In April, I picked up front-end programming. July, I learned Go. August, CRUD app. A week later, an API client. Raspberry Pi app was built in September. And then in December, I built a library for the Spark core. Then in February, I released a markdown parser. In March, I was quite curious, because again, people are talking about Rust. So, okay, let's check out Rust. And I think actually having gotten some basic concepts down in Go, I was able to, build upon my concepts that I've had after I built all these things in Go. I was able to then, also help me look into other languages. Right. At the same time, I also joined Nitrous.io, so as a developer. So that was kind of like, okay. So time spent, time invested in learning Go and programming has its rewards. So I hope that in showing you all these projects that I've managed to build in Go, that Go really isn't that difficult for beginners. And it not only isn't difficult, but it's actually a great language to learn because you learn a lot of things when you're learning in Go. And it's so great for a beginner because it doesn't come with a lot of the extra things that you can learn later on, but you don't have to introduce that to a beginner. And I wouldn't say that learning Go it's easy because as I was learning Go, I did feel like I had to spend a bit more time in understanding some concepts at the beginning. But I feel that the rewards are actually worth the investment in Go. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is that I find that Go is an excellent tool for the imagination. I find that the kind of programming tool that you learn at the beginning shapes the way you think and the programs that you end up building. So as an example, had I decided to learn a tool like Ruby on Rails at the beginning, I would have been building all maybe web app stuff. But for Go, I experimented with a lot of things. I could cross-compile programs to run in the Raspberry Pi. I could build basic web apps like the CRUD app and the API client. I could build things like a markdown parser, and it was all an effective tool for me when I used Go. So as a beginner, Go felt like it gave me Lego bricks to work on. So you have Go's libraries, Go's functions as packages. In a way, it emphasizes modularity. It seemed like I could fit all these pieces together like Lego bricks and build a program with the tools that Go provided. And I think that's great for encouraging the freedom of imagination as you conceptualize your program, because you know what each function is supposed to do, so you feel like you're in control of it. And it helps because if you conceptualize a program in your head, it's very easy and it's quite straightforward to implement it in Go. And I think, so just as another illustration, I think Go with Go, there's usually only one way of doing one thing. So to do one thing, you can't write it in like 5 or 6 ways maybe. So I think that's important because it keeps your focus. It takes your mind away from thinking about, like syntax issues, but it helps you focus on implementation and focusing on the entire concept of your program. As I mentioned, single rule, very important. Having clear conventions in Go also helps in freeing your mind to focus on your program. Usually only one way to do one thing. And without worrying too much about syntax issues, frees up your imagination to build whatever you want with very powerful tools. Okay, so let me do a demonstration of the API client that I mentioned earlier. Can you see? Oops. Oh, there you go. All right, so this is the API client that I built. What you see on the left is our pictures that I extracted from Flickr from Singapore, which is the city that is in focus right now. So there's a button here. If you press next city, you'll be brought to, you can see the next random city on the list. And then it will show you, it will extract pictures from Flickr from that city. The number on the right is the weather information that is pulled from the weather API. So the current temperature in Singapore, where I'm from, is 25 degrees with thundery showers, it seems. So if you press next, you see Bangkok. And you can scroll down to see a list of all the pictures that were uploaded for Bangkok. Next city would be Shanghai. So there's a whole lot of lists. So I built this in pure Go. Right, let me go back to my presentation. Yep, so pure Go was used. The list you see on the right is a full list of all the libraries that I've used to build this Go API client. It's very interesting. It was very fun building this because at that time I was experimenting with Go's libraries. So I thought, okay, let's build an API client. And then I sort of came across the random library in Go. So I thought, that's interesting, let's throw it in as well and see what I can make out of this program. So it was quite spontaneous, it was very experimental, it was just me trying to use Go's libraries. So it helped me to randomize the cities that are displayed, also helped me to randomize the pictures that are displayed on the API client. I came across this quote when I was just reading up on programming literature. I think it was mentioned by Alan Kay, who said that the big idea is messaging. The key in making great and growable systems is much more to design how its modules communicate rather than how its internal properties and behaviors should be. So that struck a chord with me as I was programming in Go, because it seemed like Go's emphasis on modularity and composition emphasize passing messages to each other and how its modules communicate with each other. So I really like that about Go. In closing, a very important reason why I love Go, and I love the fact that Go was my first language that I decided to pick up, was that at many times many developers came to me and told me all the things that they didn't like about Go. But I think as a beginner, what was more important for me was that with Go, in a very, very practical way, I was able to pick up programming and computer science concepts from a complete beginner's background, rather quickly enjoy the process and learn a ton of things in the meantime and get a job. So Go not only sustained and fueled the curiosity about programming that I already had inside. I think Peter mentioned earlier in his talk that it was important to highlight the success stories for the technical as well as the business success stories. But for me, I think a lot of it has to do with a personal success story, not just personal, but professional as well. Because Go I'm picking up Go has a very, very direct and real impact in my life. I love what I do much more than I was, much happier than I was when I was a lawyer and making people bankrupt. If you believe in the concept of self-actualization and actually doing what you love, yes, I found that I do love programming. I found it something else that I was looking for when I was still not a very happy law student and a lawyer. So as I continue my journey with programming, I hope to retain the spirit of discovery, a beginner's mind of curiosity, amazement, and wonder at technology, and the cumulative efforts of people to build technology. So I've heard it often said that by advanced and experienced programmers, why they love Go? Because Go will make you love programming again. For me, Go didn't make me love programming again. Sorry. Go made me love programming. So, sorry. Let me just do it again. Okay, I missed it. Okay, it has to have that effect. Right, Go made me love programming. So, yep, so that's all for my talk. Thank you very much.